Here, but we added a spot where fish can hide from predators and boats that patrol the waters. And since the 70s, 60 more species of fish have come to the Chicago River. So it's actually doing its job, helping us repair the ecosystem and establish a better relationship to these waterways, which is very important because we owe a lot of our success to the river, but despite that, we haven't treated it with respect until much more recently. We've used it for transportation, trade, even sewage back in the day. So, never quite had the relationship with it that we're trying to build now. And that's ironic because even our name comes from the river. It comes from the Potawatomi word escagua, which means stinkweed. It's a type of onion which grew along our riverbeds. So, New York's the Big Apple. Here in Chicago, we are literally the little stinky onion. Where we get our name from. 100% true. But even that comes from the river. So, we owe a lot to it. Trying to treat it a little bit better nowadays. On the right, here's another cool style of architecture. This came after revivalism in the mid-1920s. Merchandise Mart is a great example of Art Deco style architecture. It's got sturdy Indiana limestone as its base material, all about streamlined verticality. Draws your eyes upward, makes the building seem bigger than it actually is. Every Art Deco building's competing for your attention. And another way it draws your attention to it is through ornamentation. If you look above the windows, you can see gold diamonds up there. It's the glitz and glam of the roaring 20s coming out in building form. Think Great Gatsby. That's what Art Deco buildings tend to embody. We'll talk more about the history behind it a little bit later on the tour, but first, get those cameras up. On the opposite side of Franklin Street Bridge, you get a beautiful trophy case of architecture at Wolf Point, where the three branches of the river meet. And it's a beautiful view. The sun's coming out, so take it in. First building here I want to point out is on the left, a curved glass building, the new Beam building. This was Ferris Bueller's dad's office from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But the curve of that building matches the curve of the river, and so does its greenish bluish tint. So, pays tribute to where it is. That's contextualism. There's another contextualist building in front of us, a giant stick of deodorant, or McDonald's apple pie, a Hot Pocket. You can pick any one of those. It's a River Point, curved entrance and top, reflects the curve of the river that we're making to the right. And our last contextualist building is that Y-shaped one on the left, 150 North Riverside. The Y pays tribute to where we are because Wolf Point, where the three branches of the river meet, literally makes a giant Y if you're looking at a map of Chicago. This was our first neighborhood. First taverns, hotels, ferries, all propped up right here. So we owe a lot to it and pay tribute to it in Y-shaped designs. Keep an eye out for Y's. You'll find them hidden all throughout our city. Found them everywhere as well. That's all paying tribute to Wolf Point here. In front of us now, we've got a bridge suspended over the river. The Carolab Railway Bridge. Used to allow trains to the area, but it only comes down once a year now, just to make sure it still works. This designated landmark in 1997. But we still have 37 movable bridges here in Chicago. It's the most in the U.S. Second most in the world behind Amsterdam, actually. And our bridges are uniform in style. They are called Chicago Style, Double Leaf, Trunnion Bascule bridges. It's a lot there. Double leaf means they open in two parts, separating from the middle. This is a single leaf bridge. Moves in one giant part instead of two, so it's not like other bridges. Trunnion means the axles of the bridge are on the river race. Describes the relationship of the bridge to the river. And bascule means seesaw, or teeter-totter. It's a method we use to move them. On this bridge, you can see a giant cement slab hanging off the back. That's the counterweight required to move it. 3 times the weight of the bridge itself. You just don't typically see those counterweights because they're the bridge houses, which are the ornate structures next to the bridges. That gives you an idea of how much weight is required to move it. Coming up on the left here, we got my favorite downtown apartments, the River Cottages, built by Harry Weiss, 1988. This is postmodernism, fun and playful designs from the 1980s. The porthole windows and triangles are a nod and wink to the boats and their sails you can find around here. But it's not just clever design, it's also revolutionary, because these face the river. And in the 80s, we didn't want to do that, especially not the North Branch. This was a very dirty river back then. Again, our conservation efforts are a lot more recent. So, a more common view to have is that of the East Bank Club on the right-hand side. This is a high-end fitness center, $200 a month. Inside you can find people working out like Jesse Jackson, Billie Jean King, Michael Jordan, even Oprah and Obama have worked out in that gym. But all of these new additions, the river walk, the trees, the ivy, the windows, those were added in the 90s when it started to become cool to face the river. Before that, it had its back turned to the river. Didn't want to see it, didn't want to smell it, didn't want anything to do with it. So, yeah, goes to prove that our conservation efforts are a lot more recent. And one more point to prove that is on the left-hand side. We got the Kinsey Townhomes. There are 70 of these townhomes. This isn't a river walk, this is a promenade. That's how they sold these. In fact, when they released the plans that they were going to be building 70 of these townhomes, they all sold immediately for $1.2 million before the ground had even been broke. That was in the early 2000s. Nowadays, these townhomes are all worth about $3 to $4 million.
Ashu,
So, gives
say
you
hi
an
to
idea of
Kaku.
how the ever-changing attitudes about the river are embodied right there through the Kinsey Townhome.
Shian.
Now, I want to real quick give you guys a recommendation that
Say
I give
hi.
to anybody who visits
Say
our
hi to
city,
Kaku.
and that is to get out and see our neighborhoods. I want to be clear, that's nothing against downtown what you see today. It's very beautiful. I just think if you only stay downtown, you're missing out on a whole different side of what Chicago has to offer. We've got 77 different community areas. That breaks down into over 200 different neighborhoods. They've each got their own unique style, taste, and flair. So there's a little bit of something for everybody out there. But the main thing they have, and the main thing you're probably interested in, is our nightlife. Most people visit Chicago and expect us to be like New York, the city that doesn't sleep. It's not true at all. Chicago's the city with a bedtime of 8 p.m. Try and go out tonight, you're going to see what I mean. It's hard to know what to do. And that's because we work downtown, but we don't live downtown. It's too expensive. We go back out to the neighborhoods to eat, sleep, drink, play. So if you're looking for a nightlife, that's where you gotta look too. But I do have good news. There are people that actually live downtown. It's expensive, but coming up on the right-hand side, you may notice we've got some nice condos, some buildings coming up here with balconies, which might seem pretty obvious, but anytime you see a balcony, that means somebody lives there. So it gives you an idea that it's a residential part of town. On the right-hand side, beyond these buildings, is the River North neighborhood. Of all the neighborhoods in the city, highest concentration of entertainment and restaurant venues in Medellin. Right over there in River North.